The first poem is called, which could be a relationship poem, it's called Want Me. Get this posted off. Lemons crystallized in sugar, glistening on a blue glazed plate. The rarest volume bound in blood leather. A silk carpet woven so finely you can't push a needle through, that from one edge is a silver of a leaf underwater, and from the other, blue lumiere, first frost on the cornflowers. A duet for cello and wood smoke, violin and icicle. Tangle of black hair steeped in sandalwood, jasmine, bergamot, and vetiver, and jeweled with pomegranate seeds. Panther's broad tongue, soothing hunt-bruised paws. Eyelids of ribbon snakes. Taut skin of a lavender creme brulee. Split vanilla pods swollen with bourbon. A lunamoth's wings, enormous celadon, trembling. So for that poem, I gave myself the assignment of writing a seduction poem without any people in it. So there was no I or you. There's some hair, but no people. So maybe you felt the pull, but maybe you didn't, but maybe you did. So this poem is called Moon Shadow. Amazed at such new magnets in the skin, in flecks of gold caught in her hair, he wants to touch it. In a fine scratch along the pig's belly of her cheek, the tracing of blood and a faint upwelling of flesh surrounding it. He wants to run his tongue against it for the salt. He is so suddenly, terribly thirsty. He turns to her and grips her upper arms hard and backs her up against the barn wall, wondering at the ease he's felt with her all his life without knowing it. And in the instant of his knowing it, that joy utterly gone, utterly lost. And this new thing, this her about to struggle, he can feel it, is all he wants, maybe all he's wanted. The moment when the hare looks up from grazing, petrified, then bounds headlong for cover in the brush. This poem is called Galileo, and it's a bad neighbor poem. I'm sure none of you have ever had a bad neighbor, since most of us, or many of us, live in the city and live in these apartment buildings. So I live in a top floor apartment, and you would think that when you live, you move into the top floor apartment, you're like, yeah, that's it. I can make all the noise I want, and I can't hear anybody, but not here because the floor is very thin and the ceiling's very thin, so I can hear everything. So I had these two people who were living downstairs from me, this couple, everything was fine for a while, and then they started fighting. And these weren't just normal fights like, oh, I hate you too. It's just like 911 level, things like, doors slamming, things being thrown, these curses strings of curses that I would never have dreamed of in my entire life. And so this went on for months and was so distressing. And eventually they did move out, which was fabulous. A few months, quiet little young couple moves in. And then they start fighting also. But they were fighting in a different language, so I didn't actually know what they were saying, but it still sounded pretty bad. So that went on for several months. And eventually they did move out, and these two quiet sisters moved in. So I figure as long as they stay out of relationships, and just I don't let them go out anywhere, then everything will be fine, because that apartment is cursed. So anyway, this poem's called Galileo, and it has to do with the first couple, and it contains direct quotes from their fights, which I think you'll recognize these lines because they stand out from the poem. Galileo. One flight down, they're fighting again, really going at it, with much slamming of doors and hurling of heavy objects. And I've turned up my Bach, but can still hear it. You're an idiot. Don't talk about my stuttering. I told you never to. Fuck you, just fuck you, you fucking fuck. And it almost makes my own fight seem civilized, as if I finally learned something. Though it's more likely I simply lack the balls I had 20 years ago, the righteous conviction, my frontal lobe still a work in progress. Yes, that's the latest young adult research breakthrough. I just read, too, that the venerable right-left brain distinction is a fallacy. Maybe southpaws aren't really more creative. A blow to my ego, but I will weather it, especially as there are no longer stages of grief. The wisdom keeps changing, jostling the prior wisdom out of the nest with entitlement, and later amused and sometimes tolerant condescension. The world was flat and the sun went around, etc., etc. The burning chariots and the spirits in the trees, the humors and the vapors and the leeches, the lead-white faces, the terror of the night and terror of the day, which is why we peopled them with gods and music and science and, get away from you, little bitch. You don't even have a job. And what is it about the word galileo that has such richness? It's parchment and vinegar, ground glass and oiled copper. It's the sun through a leaf jaundiced by autumn. Isn't that what we do? Stuff the void with string theory or bling theory, though we don't even know where we put the keys last night, or why no beauty's loud enough to drown out rage and drown out sorrow. So this is a sonnet about a sonnet, but I promise it's not too awful or arduous. It's called Library. I dream a sonnet made of buttons, star-shaped, faceted jet, fabric bristled pink. One boasts a lurid trompe-l'oeil cardinal posed stiff against its milky plastic sky. Paired off, their colors rise and fall like breath. A verse no doubt penned by the self-same clerk who, disgruntled, refused promotion, perk, or punch-cardless lunch hours, now arrogates, upends, and reconstructs the library by spine color. The emeralds here, rubies just there, and the voluminous onyx of all that flaccid pulp. Then, dazed with pride, with anarchy's frank gorgeousness, sinks down among the transformed stacks and weeps. So there's a little story behind that poem is that I went to Adobe Books, which is kind of around the corner-ish, a few corners, and they had, hey, for Adobe, and I walked in and the entire bookstore had been arranged by the color of the books. So I don't know, did anyone see this? It's quite a number of years ago. It was extraordinary, and you would never find anything, but I didn't care. So it was gorgeous, hours and hours, days and days of work. Next poem is Robber Girl. I took what I needed and nothing more. Not that last gold bracelet, fine as a braid, twined from 3 strands of a child's hair. Not that ruby tear, clear and faceted as a pomegranate seed. Just a blouse with gold threads, just a coat with red glass buttons. They always said I was too smart for my own good and good only for making trouble. And I thought, trouble? What a beautiful word. Half of troubadour. Wineskins, ballads, riotous by the canals, with much lifting of skirts and telling of tales. Syllables strung like pearls on a backbone of half-light and gain.